Good afternoon and welcome to an episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. We are ever so moving closer to the start of college football season. You know what it is. You know him. You love him. He is the pride and joy of El Segundo, California. Also, Cal State Northridge's most famous alum. Don't care what anybody else says. This is how it's going to be. While still being the managing editor of Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa. Tone, how you doing, my man?
Brother Biggs, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, man? We get
I am
football this weekend. How about that?
finally.
Right?
It's funny, like being a baseball fan and like football just when I knew the Mets were going to be done, their season was over, which was in like late April. I kind of knew that football was on the horizon, and I
Yep.
waited.
Yep.
I think I waited longer than um oh Odysseus' wife in the Odyssey. Like I
Oh,
waited. I
yes.
waited.
Yes. Yes.
Just and
I
it just
totally get it. We get football this weekend.
what
There were some friends of ours in town wanted to go out to dinner with us this weekend. I'm like, that's cool, but my Saturdays are gone from now until, after Christmas. My weekends in general are gone. We can spare a few hours Friday night. That's about what I got for you.
same. Now, before we jump into it, being married to a Southerner and from South Carolina, what is her barbecue preference? Does she have a sauce preference?
She will go for pretty much any of it. Um, Not a big fan of the mustard sauces. Um,
Oh,
the vinegar based barbecue sauces like that you get in a pulled pork sandwich, that kind of stuff. She's all good with that. The red sauces, which you generally actually find more in Texas and places like that, she's good with those too. We lost power last Friday for about 12 hours after a storm whipped through Charlotte and took power out of about 30 or 40,000 homes for about a day. and So we went out. We generally go out to dinner on Friday nights anyway. Even during the season, I cut off work a few hours early and leave things in the hands of the editors and tell them, don't crash the site and don't fire anybody while I'm gone, and we'll all be good. But we went out to a local barbecue place that was still open, hadn't been hit by the storm or anything, and so it was, you know. Had some wings and some pulled pork and some ribs and things like that. So yeah, lots of good barbecue places here.
I live in Wisconsin, and it's the complete opposite. People, I feel like Henry Hill in the last scene of Goodfellas, where he's talking about a marinara out of a can, and it's ketchup.
Ketchup,
Is
yeah, yeah. When he went to get spaghetti and he got noodles and ketchup, yeah,
yes,
exactly.
that's
No, we
that's me
we
in
we, we
Wisconsin.
got it good here. Like that, they're not paying me for their endorsement, but we got a place that's our favorite, Midwood Smokehouse. They do great burnt ends and sausages and do these entire platters that you order. That's with the cornbread, pretty big time.
Now, before we jump into the action of the kickoff of college football,
Mhm.
the TCU has decided to really, pretty much, for lack of a better term, shoot themselves in the foot as far as
Yeah,
media coverage. Do you
yeah,
get a delve into that one?
yeah. Just today, just a couple hours before you and I started recording this, TCU rescinded the media credentials of the Fort Worth Star Telegram. Really, my understanding is the entire paper. It's not just the reporter Stephen Johnson. And bear in mind, this is the only this is the only outlet that has a full-time TCU coverage beat reporter throughout the entire Dallas Fort Worth metroplex. This is it. And he was I guess, getting ready to head over to Ireland for this weekend's game against North Carolina, and found out that his credentials have been rescinded. Not just for the game, his access to TCU has been rescinded. Um, he was Stephen Johnson is his name, and he was the one who broke the story. Gosh, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago, of there being an assault in the TCU locker room, which led to the dismissal of one of their players, and Jacob Fields was kicked off the team as a result. And they said TCU's explanation was that Stephen Johnson's reporting and his naming of names, particularly of a specific witness, was put people in danger because that witness then received threats, anonymous threats, whether they be from fans or your basic digital media lunatics or whatever the case may be. Now, when I went through the TikTok earlier, when I saw this and I went through the TikTok, this witness, one of the teammates, had already made public comments before Stephen Johnson ran the story, before he ever used his name. He ran a story that there'd been a fight, there was an investigation, more to come. It was about 36 hours, as best as I can tell, that he ever used the witness's name after the witness had already come forward. So it really feels more like this is retribution by TCU. The athletic director, Mike Buddy, said that he had used an unnamed source with firsthand knowledge, and there was inaccurate information, and so they rescinded his credentials. And again, not just for this game, they rescinded his access and the newspaper's access to the team.
Once I'm sure that they will hopefully come to their senses and change course. But if they do, how much of that relationship will be damaged between the paper and the school?
Oh, an incredible amount. There will be a lack of trust. Look, there's always a line that exists between real media and the outlets that you cover, right? Because it's not our job to be your PR firm. It's not our job to be your stenographer. I had that conversation with the folks at UCLA when I started covering them. I had the folks with a Wake Forest when I started covering them. Wake Forest already had a stenographer. There was a guy, I'm not going to get into too much because he's not doing the job anymore. There was a guy at one of the well-known digital media outlets who also worked in the PR department for the athletic department, and just boggled my mind how you could do both and sleep at night. But whatever. He doesn't have both jobs anymore, so it doesn't matter. Now he just works in the PR department. But there's always that line. Look, I wrote things in the past that Dave Clawson didn't like. He once told me I had my head up my rear end. I didn't take it personally. This is the relationship. We got along well. This was a moment in time. I wrote a thing when Clawson was under fire about be careful what you wish for, Wake Forest, because this isn't a very good job, and went into the analysis as to why. Because you saw the social media stuff about 3-4 weeks ago, right at the end of ACC media days, when I wrote that Wake Forest had cut the budget for the football program and the basketball program, but I didn't have the specific numbers for basketball. But they had cut it for football by a couple $1 million. Jake Dickert in his first year goes 9-4, and now he's got to work with less. The administration was very irritated. Jake Dickert wasn't. I had him direct quote on the record on my recording device, saying we're in the bottom third of the ACC when it comes to spending. But the administration was pissed. And that weekend, they called somebody that they knew they could rely upon at ESPN.com and fed that reporter information, which was we're in the top half, and that reporter's numbers aren't accurate, which I found interesting. They didn't deny the budget cut. They denied the numbers. In which I was able to back up a million times over anyway. And so that hit social media that weekend and got a lot of attention. So the following Monday, I asked Jake if he wanted to comment on, and all the other reporters who were there in that press gaggle, they knew. I will usually wait for the big picture questions. I'll usually wait until all the questions about the depth chart or the quarterback or all the other reporters have gotten their questions out, including me. I got football questions too, but I'll wait until I make sure everyone else has gotten in what they need. But for this one, they said, you're up first because we got to make sure you get this in, because they knew there needed to be a follow-up. Jake, do you care to comment on this? And his answer was, I don't deal in perceptions from someone in the athletic department. I deal in factual realities. And this school is in the bottom third of the conference in spending. And he went into more details. I saw the athletic director just in passing one time, and he never even acknowledged me. when we walked, I said, "Hey, John," and he just kind of gave me a nod and kept going. This is the relationship. This is the reality. You don't want it to be ugly. You don't want it to be confrontational. You want it to, but we've got a job to do, and the job is to report on what we know to be the case. Case in point, and I don't want to go on too long on this. We got a lot to cover, I know, but the blogger Tony Farmer, who blogs in the Buffalo Bills coverage, and there has been all of that about Ed Oliver and of the Bills, and the Bills saying he was out for a little bit because he was injured, and he wasn't injured. The Bills were covering for an unfortunate family situation that he had gone through, and the people who cover the Bills knew what it was. His child had accidentally drowned in a backyard pool. The family was grieving. There'd been a police investigation. It was an accident. There's no anything. Leave the man alone. Let him be with his family. There was nothing to be gained by outing this story, but this blogger did it. And then threw mud at all of the beat reporters who knew about the story for a couple of weeks and didn't throw it out there on Twitter or whatever. This industry is evolving, as you know, on a daily basis as to what we're supposed to do. The old school ways are gone. The owners of my company reminded me of that constantly when I fight over SEO things and whatever that they want to put in the articles. And I'm constantly reminded that I'm a dinosaur in this industry, by my own company, by the way. But it's that line is there. But you have to have the common sense to know when to cross it, when not to cross it. I don't think Steve Johnson did anything wrong in the TCU coverage. The witness had already come out. His name was known. He had been quoted. So he put his name out there. So what? But TCU seems to be retaliating.
And it's funny. Before I jumped into biz, I always thought that it would be the major programs, the Alabamas, the Florida, the Texas, at every level, even Division II, Division III. I still see it. I still see if I write an article, if I've interviewed with somebody, they're like, well, you talked about something negative in the game. Well, they lost 32-0. I'm not going to sit there and say they had a great effort. No, they got stomped. I'm not going to sit there and say those words, but it's more of, it's funny because a lot of the time it's not the coaches. A lot of the time it's the athletic director. It's the front office folks, if there was such thing as a front office in college athletics. And I can't tell you how many times a coach, even an assistant coach, sent an email and said, hey, I'm sorry that so-and-so said this. You were right on along. I'm like, still, this is what we do. It's just there are people who, we live in a society where what we do is, it's been polluted by the hot take folks or the overly effusive praise people who see nothing but brightness. I'm like, even when I worked for the Raiders, even when I covered back then the Oakland Raiders, and they had a rookie, and I watched all of his film, the All-22, and Nothing. Just like, this is good. This is It's like point by point. I had the rookie jump into my mentions, and then message me in bold terms. I'm like, look, man, it's not really gonna be about that, but you might want to watch what you say. And I just then the PR people immediately spun it back. Oh, we're sorry. And I'm like, I'm not gonna sit there and write about this,
Right.
this interaction, because that's not news. Me, it'll not
Yeah,
like.
I'm not the story. And Tony Farmer with the Bills story made himself the story by trying to be smarter than everybody else by reporting, the tragic loss of this little child when it wasn't necessary. Um, and and you probably discover this also because you cover so much college sports at different levels. The ones that I'm always wary of are the parents who follow me on social media because you love what I wrote in the preview, but the minute the minute I write that your kid missed 3 tackles in critical moments of the game, I'm certain to hear from you. There was a quarterback prospect at UCLA. I'm going to say my second, maybe my third year there. No, I think it was my second year there. Um, Lightly recruited. Matter of fact, UCLA was the only Power Four school that recruited him. Everyone else who recruited him was in the Ivy League. And he had come from Houston, Texas. And I watched, oh gosh, hours of game film of 7-on-7 camps and things like that of him. And I wrote my review of him, that he's quick, he runs well, he's got a good short range to intermediate arm, but man, his long balls wobble and it's going to be a problem, if he can't strengthen up. But he's only 5'10", so and his dad came at me on social media really hard and was like, I don't know what you're watching, but whatever video you think you see, I want the date and the timestamp of your. And I responded back. He said, "There's a reason my kid is a Power Four quarterback." And I'm like, look, due respect, I'm not going to get into swapping timestamps on videos with you and arguing back and forth. Here's what I watched. It's there. You can watch it yourself. And yes, your kid is a Power Four quarterback, and congratulations to him. Most of his offers were from the Ivy League. And I mean, I think the kid played in 2 or 3 games his entire UCLA career, became a brilliant ambassador, and I do not use that name lightly or that description lightly, became a brilliant NIL ambassador because he had such a huge personality and business sense that he got an NIL offer. He took the money, turned it over to a local charity and a local food bank, I believe, which then got other corporations to jump on with him. He's working in some business now, but still does tours talking about NIL and corporate availabilities for athletes and things like that. Much more successful at that than he ever was at football. But yeah, whether it's the administration, the athletic director, the administration didn't like it when I reported, Dave Clawson, and he's starting to melt down, and Dave started putting an associate athletic director in his weekly press conferences, and the administration didn't like that. And I said, then don't put somebody in there. What do you want from me? This isn't a secret cabal of a press conference, for goodness sake. You're putting it on Zoom. So, it's not our job to carry your water. It's our job to report what we see. I'm not going to be needlessly negative, but I'm also not going to be inappropriately positive. I'm going to report what I see, period, full stop.
The quarterback you mentioned, I remember that. I remember that guy. I know
Chase
who it
Griffin.
is.
Yep. Chase Griffin.
I remember that because he was forever ago. He was named in the ESPN article. I think it was 13, and is like they were saying he was the next big thing as a 13-year-old quarterback, which I cannot stand when these articles come out. Is such lazy journalism.
Sure, it is. Yeah, there's no way of knowing that when they're 13. And he was a great guy. He took no issue with what I wrote about him. He and I had a good relationship for the couple of years we were together. It's the parents. It's always the parents.
It is. Now I gotta issue a mea culpa. I may have misjudged. Nah, I still have the same opinion of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. I do. That will never change for all the reasons in the world.
Sure.
However, the conference seemingly taking a rather stronger than I thought stance, like,
Mhm.
which is good,
Mhm.
about the Lane Lane Kiffin and his desire to forget that there should be a line between the NFL and college football for a reason.
Right. Right.
And the Big Ten followed suit, and
Mhm.
it's weird watching the SEC do things correctly.
They are doing it correctly. I'm gonna alter that. They're attempting to do it correctly. I don't know if in a court of law they're going to get away with this when they get sued, and they will, of course, at some point be sued. Look, I think it's useful to kind of back into how we got here with the SEC and kind of where are we with the lawsuits and things like that. The hundreds of athletes who were protected by the judge in Colorado, they are still ineligible and will likely remain ineligible. The NCAA got a stay on that injunction, and that includes a couple of all conference defensive linemen that Kurt Signetti had gotten back. They're off. They can't play. No one in that Colorado case is eligible right now, and they're not likely to be. And the same is true with the case in Ohio, which was mostly basketball players. The football, and I think this is really important to keep in mind. The football, especially with the football, this is not about who's going to be right or wrong at trial. There isn't going to be a trial for any of this because the football season starts now. Classes start now. The and we love it. It's the namesake. The ad drop deadline at schools is next week, almost across the entire country. You can't get into school. You can't get into classes. I had some lawyer tell me all of these guys are already on campus and enrolled. I'm like, no, they're not. Why would they be if they didn't think they were going to get to play? And they don't know if they're going to get to play. This is a race against the calendar for the football players. Because if you don't have the authority to play within the next 2 weeks, you're not going to get it. And a trial won't matter because a trial won't happen until December or even next year. The season will be over. The trial and the entire case will be legally rendered moot and it'll be dropped. So it's about fighting the calendar right now. And the big one, which you referenced with Lane Kiffin, it was the case in Louisiana where a district court judge gave the right of return. We're going to call it the right of return for players, even if they were in the NFL, even if they had been drafted. But if they've been cut, if they've been waived, they want to go back to get their fifth year of college, they can do it. So you got a guy like Daquan Wright, for who ironically was at Ole Miss and then in the NFL with the Browns and now is going to LSU. And same thing with Xavier Harris as well. Went from Ole Miss to the Saints, now to LSU after he got cut. They both cleared waivers. Trent Hendrick, who went from James Madison to the Cleveland Browns mini camp and is now at UCLA. He has been cleared by the Big Ten because he never actually signed a contract with Cleveland. He got invited to minicamp. He has paid back whatever money he made at minicamp, his per diems, any money his agent advanced to him. He's gotten proof that he's paid that back. So for now, he's clear. Unless and all these guys are clear, right? Until the NCAA gets a stay on the injunction from the Louisiana judge. Big date, keep in mind, Monday. is the next court date in that case, where the NCAA will try to get a stay, in which case Lane Kiffin's new players will be immediately ineligible. You can't even practice, you can't do anything, clear out your locker, move on. The Louisiana case also included a couple of basketball players, Donovan Dent, who had been at UCLA, retired after his eligibility was over. Now he's at LSU. What's going on at LSU? How is Will Wade doing this? How is Lane Kiffin doing this? Kim Mulkey. Did you see what Kim Mulkey did? Kim
Yes.
Mulkey took on a player, an international player from Russia, and said these international crises should not define opportunities to play college basketball. Swell story, Kim, except you just lost a player because you already had someone on your team whose father is on active duty in the Ukrainian military. And you thought bringing in a player from Russia was going to work. Can you imagine for a second, before we get into the conferences, what is it like for the athletic director at LSU to have his department meetings every Monday? Will Wade, who was part of the Adidas scandal and was basically thrown out of North Carolina State. Lane Kiffin, Kim Mulkey. What are these department meetings like?
It has to be like the panic scene from the movie Airplane, where people are just losing their minds.
Yeah, right. They're running all over. Yeah. Except the panic scene from Airplane had a naked woman. I don't want to see any of these people naked in the department meetings.
Please no.
But anyway, so to your point, then you get to the conferences, because all of this is just kind of hanging there, right? So the Big Ten started with a rule, and these have all come about in the last 36 hours. The Big Ten created a rule that if you signed a contract with an NFL team, NBA team, G League team, whatever, you cannot come back to play for a school in their conference. We already talked about how Trent Hendrick at UCLA cleared the process. And then the SEC voted and did the same thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. The SEC in its announcement said it was a unanimous vote. Now, think about that. How does the LSU athletic director vote against what Lane Kiffin and Will Wade are currently doing? If he was really opposed to it, why wouldn't he just walk down the hall and say, Lane, I'm not good with this. You can't sign these kids. Turns out it was unanimous for those who voted. It was not a 16-0 vote. It was a 15-0 vote. LSU abstained. So the ACC and the Big 12 are going to follow suit. We have been in contact with administrators and understand that the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, and the Pac-12 are also going to do this. We've not yet heard back from the MAC. This is going to be the course that they take. There's a little bit of a problem with it in that they're all doing it all right around the same time, all within hours of each other. You start to get a whiff of collusion, which of course is a legal problem. You would have to prove, if you're one of the players' attorneys, you'd have to prove that they worked it out together. There'd have to be emails from Tony Petitti to Greg Sankey or, Jim Phillips or whatever the case may be. So it's hard to prove, but you start to get a little whiff of one conference did it. Now they're all jumping on board. I don't know if this stands up legally. The conferences, it has been understood, have the same lack of protection that the NCAA does in terms of antitrust protections and exemptions. The case in Louisiana is not an antitrust case. It has been brought, the one in Colorado, Ohio, and some of the other ones are. This has been brought as a breach of contract. So it's a little bit different, but just in big picture terms, I don't know what the enforceability of these rules are. There will be lawsuits. There will be billable hours, right? You and I both know that. But as soon as this happened, Some of our favorite social media attorneys jumped in pretty quickly. Darren Heitner, Ryan Downton, who called me a moron on social media last week as we were debating legal strategies. They said they're considering actions against the SEC, specifically against the SEC because of the case that they are dealing with being in Louisiana. They want to claim that the SEC is in contempt of court from the Louisiana ruling. Now, you've got a problem there, as I've talked to a couple of lawyers last night and this morning. You've got a problem there in that the SEC was never part of the lawsuit in the Louisiana courtroom. They were not a defendant. They were not a named party in the lawsuit. So therefore, can they be compelled to follow a temporary restraining order that was given to just the NCAA and participating parties? Okay, well, we're not seeing where the SEC is participating with the NCAA in this new rule. The NCAA has had nothing to do with it. They've said nothing about it. So there is no proof that they were parties to the suit. Louisiana state law, which is what this ruling is on, that we looked up, it doesn't bind everybody who participates in NCAA events or athletics. It doesn't bind everybody. It binds those who are named parties in the suit. So, look, if the SEC, if the Big Ten, if the rest of them independently adopt and enforce their own conference rules, you're going to have to actually sue the SEC. You can't. I don't think you're going to successfully go to court and get contempt of court charges brought against them. You're going to have to file new lawsuits against them, and you're going to have to wait. You can't do it just based on the rule. The rule has not been enforced yet. You're going to have to wait until a coach has been suspended. And those are some of the rules, by the way, the penalties for these rules. A coach will be suspended for 50% of the season. The school will be fined. Doesn't say how much, but I would imagine, substantial amounts. The players will be immediately ineligible, and you will forfeit any games that they participated in. So the penalties are heavy, but you're going to have to wait until it actually happens to someone. You can't file a lawsuit because someone made a rule until there's an injury, until someone has been injured by that rule. You've got no standing in court to do it. So we'll see. It's do the conferences have the authority? That's an open-ended question. We are going to go into college football season with a lot of litigation still pending. I think the Louisiana one, we will get answers next week as to whether there's a stay. If there isn't a stay, the NCAA will appeal to the next level and ask for an expedited hearing. If these guys play for LSU, are there penalties for LSU playing them? If it's later found that the NCAA can get a stay on the injunction, I think that would be pretty horrible of the NCAA to do because, they're going. I don't like what Kiffin did, and I don't like Kiffin's quote that, well, if we don't get them, somebody else is going to. I think that's lame. I think that's just weak crap. I've talked to other coaches. I was at Wake Forest on today's Wednesday. Oh, I was there yesterday as we talk about it, and asked Jake Dickert, said, you've got a roster spot available. You're not at the limit. And he said, I'm not going to do it. Not interested in bringing in a guy a week before the season starts. We've got our team. We've got our flow. We've got our chemistry. I'm not going to bring someone in, regardless of how good they are, that's going to upset what we've spent months creating. And we've talked to some other coaches and administrators who have basically done the same thing. But this is Lane Kiffin. Lane's going to be Lane.
Lane, and it's funny. I know you mentioned earlier about how, being a quote unquote dinosaur in the business. For me, it sits wrong because you're bringing in potentially a player, not potentially, you're bringing a player who he's not there to finish their degree. He's not there to finish his degree. He's not there to start the advanced degree. He just had to play football and go somewhere and then just no. If he had really any interest in trying to finish that degree, he would have stayed in school in the first place.
Yeah, when you
Or
look, for a lot of these guys, they're coming in as grad students. You only have to take, a very small amount. I think it's like 6 hours per week of grad school work, and it can be done online. I'm forgetting who it is, but there's a well-known quarterback who his class is his internship, which is at a golf course.
Lenora Sellers of South
That's
Carolina.
it. That's who it is. And that is, because they're not getting their master's degree. They're not there to get their master's degree. They're there to do enough to stay eligible. And in this day and age, you can do it remotely. He'll never see the inside of a class. Rocco Becht at Penn State last week said, "Yeah, I don't know what class I'm going to take. There will be one, but they haven't decided for me." Wow. Okay. They're not there to get their master's degree. And I had an attorney hit me up online and said, "Well, they have to be making progress toward." Yeah, progress toward just means you're taking the classes and passing them. You're fulfilling the minimum amount of hourly credit requirements. You're passing the classes to stay eligible. Once December is over, or your time in the playoffs or postseason or bowl games are over, you're out, you're gone. You'll probably take an incomplete in the class because you won't be around for the final exam, depending upon when your season is over. So, I mean, it's juking the system. At least when Matt Leinart was juking the system at SC when he came back for his final for an extra year. At least he was on campus taking his ballroom dancing classes
exactly.
in his grad school.
Exactly. Esteemed Ohio State philosopher Cardell Jones once said he wasn't there to play school.
We're not here to play school. Exactly.
Ironically, years after he walked and got his degree from Ohio, so he was there to go to school after he finished, and it's just it's one of those things that I find myself, the older I get, the more into this business I become. I always want Lane just to say the right things and do the right things, but Lane Kiffin is not going to be that guy. He's not going to. He refuses to do the obviously correct course of action.
We had hoped he had grown up at Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
A couple of years in at Ole Miss, it looked like maybe he changed. He was saying and doing the right things. And then you look at how he left Ole Miss, and you look at that ugliness and what he did to the team. And oh, by the way, let's not push aside too quickly that Daquan Wright played for Lane at Ole Miss, as did Xavier Harris, and Wright trashed Kiffin when Kiffin quit to take the LSU job and leave the team before the season was over. Wright publicly trashed him and said it was gutless to do what he was doing. But apparently not so gutless that you're not willing to play for him for some more money, other than what you're going to make. But here's the thing too: is the SEC has this rule about you cannot transfer from one SEC school to another. You can't. Again, never been challenged in court. It will be at some point. Daquan Wright is getting around it, and you know how? Because he's not transferring from Ole Miss to LSU because he had the Cleveland Browns in between. So technically, it's not a transfer. I mean, talk about splitting hairs. Xavier Harris had the New Orleans Saints in between his time. He had 2 weeks of New Orleans Saints rookie camp in between Ole Miss and LSU. So technically, it's not a transfer from one SEC school to the other. This is how we've gotten in splitting hairs.
It's that fine line that a lot of college, the gray area, and I'm watching internet lawyers, build houses in the gray area and reside in the gray area. as
Mhm.
to not overcommit or undercommit their words. And it's just, I wonder what some of these lawyers like. Do they actually practice, or do they just practice moving their thumbs across the screen?
Oh, it's amazing, right? I mean, one of the aforementioned lawyers that we were just talking about has taken on Mia Moore as a client, former Clemson basketball player who is a looking for another year. She's already had 5 years. She's looking for a sixth. She's played 5 years. She had a red shirt. There was an injury somewhere in there during her 5 years, which limited her playing time. And so one of these aforementioned attorneys posted today, he's very, very proud to take on her case and try and get her a sixth year. Come on, man. These medical waivers are supposed to be coming to an end. But we're still doing it. And like you said, there are social media attorneys making a good living off of this.
I mean, they mentioned more like decent career, but I mean, it, could she do well playing overseas? Could she do well? I mean,
Sure.
it's just, I don't know. It's such a weirdness. But what is not weird, as we mentioned, the discussions surrounding the first game, this one of the I guess is week 0, Virginia and NC State. For
Yeah.
me, my story I'm most interested to see Bo Prabula. I watched
Hmm.
him when he was at Penn State, when he was a
Hmm.
backup to Drew Aller, who got
Hmm.
hurt against Wisconsin. Prabula came in, played well. He played well at Missouri before getting hurt himself.
Hmm.
He is the ultimate all or nothing, feast or famine type quarterback. He's exciting for fans, but he ultimately frustrates you. Do you think that he's found the right place at Virginia where they're going to want to run the ball more
Hmm.
often than they pass it?
I do think he's found a good place. I think that the offense for Virginia doesn't need Prabula to go downfield, doesn't need him to put up big numbers, 200, 250 yards a game passing, and running the ball will be good enough. They've got a here's a kid. They've got a backup also. Remember Eli Holstein from
From
Pitt
Pitt,
was a just phenom his freshman year
yes.
and disappeared. But they've got a good. They went out and got a running back from Middle Tennessee, Jakyle Middlebrook, who is going to be really good. They've got some good receivers. So I think and this was a game that was remember supposed to be played in Rio in Brazil.
Mhm.
It's one thing, these international games, which I hate, by the way. I hate them with a red hot passion. College football is about home games and tailgating and your fan base turning out and packing the stadium. The Ireland game, whatever. But a game down in Brazil, it's one thing if you're going to watch Notre Dame play Navy or whatever. But NC State versus Virginia, no one was buying tickets and nobody was traveling to Brazil to go. So they moved it back to what it was originally supposed to be, which was a Virginia home game in Charlottesville. Um, look, Virginia was just that close to the ACC championship last year. Tony Elliott has done a job. Um, through all the rough patches, through all the rough times, the school stood with them, stood behind them, and they are reaping the benefits of that now. So I think that the defense of Virginia is going to be very good. Um, I think they don't have a lot of depth on defense, but their starting 11 is good. I think their offense is good enough. Um, I don't think that they are an ACC champion, but I think they're a top four, in
Yes.
all likelihood, for the conference. I think the front four, the questions on the Virginia defense really are in the secondary. The front four is really good. They got Matthew Fobbs, who transferred from Baylor, and they got Fisher Kamak, who are the two defensive ends. And I think that front four is going to be really good, and that poses a problem for NC State. because CJ Bailey, he had a decent year. He's thrown for 5,600 yards in his 2 seasons at NC State. But there are few head coaches who have had as much quarterback chaos as Dave Doeren. And a lot of it's self-inflicted chaos of who he's willing to play and who's going to sit out so they can, stay healthy and go in the portal and things like that. He's got a little bit of a better offensive line to work with this year, but it's they've remember they had Hollywood Smothers at running back last year, and they're not even close to having that kind of running game again this year. So in the ACC media poll, I had picked NC State somewhere in the middle of the conference. They're a 5.5-point underdog for this game. As I checked just before we logged on. And Virginia 5.5-point favorite. I think Virginia covers that.
I think Virginia just on if he stays healthy and just the power spread, I think is going to give NC State an issue. And I think Pegula, he was playing well in the SEC, surprisingly. I mean, it's Missouri. They weren't going to beat anybody of any note, but they stayed relatively close to Alabama. They stayed relatively close here. And he will do more than enough. And I think that I really think that the Cavs win by a touchdown.
Well, and again, I think that you're looking at an NC State team that finished 111th last year in total defense. Never got off the field on fourth down. In other words, they never got off the field after just 3 plays. They were always extended drives by the offense. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that the defense is going to be tremendously better. Slightly better, sure. Tremendously better, don't know. So Pegula doesn't have to do magical things. He just has to be good enough. He has to be mistake-free. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to chuck it downfield. Doesn't have to have 350 yards passing. Just play well enough and limit the mistakes, and Virginia will win.
That's exactly what I'm thinking too. I think it's a good start to the season. I think it is. I think the ACC is going to be exciting again. I really think that
it'll be fun.
And I mean, considering the tumultuous environment around a couple years ago with all the lawsuits, I think that Jim Phillips needs this.
He does. He needs to have a good year, because if that Senate bill ever, gets done again and passes through the House and whatever, you're looking at new terms that could make it easier for some of his schools to depart for other conferences. So he needs to enjoy this while he has it.
Exactly. Now, last question. It's about football, but not college. Sure. As a Rams fan, scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you that Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett will be paired side by side?
I am very excited with an asterisk. Not sure I was really up on the Myles Garrett for Jared Verse trade. And I will tell you, look, Myles Garrett is great, but it puts you in a position of, again, you're positioning your roster to have to win this year. Myles Garrett is getting up there in years. Jared Verse, not as good as Myles Garrett, but a lot younger, with a huge, very high ceiling, a lot more growth for Verse. So I wasn't thrilled about the trade. You're trading away good young talent for older talent. You have to win now. You have to anyway, because your quarterback's got 2 years left on his contract, and that's going to be it for his career, or should be. But seeing Aaron Donald come back, I mean, come on, man. Dude's a future Hall of Famer, and I love that Rams defense. Love it.
Jared Verse tells the story of when he first went to work out with Donald. Like he went to
Mm-hmm.
Donald's house because he has like an
Mm-hmm.
elaborate gym. He's like, okay, we're going to start with about 35 minutes of running uphill on a treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing it. He's like, he finishes it. Aaron Donald, okay, now that the warm up's over, he's like, warm up. I thought we were done. He's like,
Exactly.
and Verse looks at him and says, I'm about to call the cops. I'm about to fall out over here. And he's like, the paces that Donald goes through, even when he was retired,
Mm-hmm.
like to just like he just, from what people have said, because of when he was at Pitt, people say, oh, his lack of height, his lack of size, they thought that would be an issue.
He had to
It
make
was no
up for it
issue.
elsewhere. Yeah, but and bear in mind when Jared Verse is talking like that, Jared Verse is someone who, when he was at Florida State, was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks team, for his final year there, meaning just an athletic freak. And Donald was just abusing him with what he does on a daily basis. I mean, look, I'm thrilled having Aaron Donald back, but the Rams have put themselves in a position you must win now, and I'm on board. I am a believer that this is a Super Bowl quality team. I am a believer in this team, but you have to win now because you're getting old, and you've traded away young talent. You've traded away. I mean, man, it hurts me watching Hard Knocks and seeing Cooper Kupp in a Seattle uniform. It just hurts. Um, you've traded away youth. You've traded away draft picks. So you have to win now. You absolutely have to. And I'm on board. I'm on the train, but you have to do it now.
Now that we have the countdown to college football, I see that the 5th day, 5 days remaining. I thought about you. I thought about the 5th day. I was like, where's Reggie Bush? Kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Look, that is the only day Kate does this from 99 all the way down to 1. And she has stuff in there that I will not put on my social media pages because they wear the wrong uniform, and I won't do it. But number 5 is the only one I have ever mandated. I don't want to hear about Christian McCaffrey. I don't want to hear about Reggie Bush. I don't want to hear about Pat White. I don't care. That day belongs to Kenny Easley. It just does. And on my personal social media pages, former UCLA players who practiced against him chimed in, and they were like, I have never been hit like I was in practices by Kenny Easley. He just brought it every day.
People forget that he had just a monster career, not just college, but the pros. He's
With
a
the
Hall of Famer
Seahawks.
in both.
Yep.
And he retired at what, 28?
Yeah, he retired early, had some kidney disease issues, passed away last year. And, very sad to see for a guy that I loved watching when I, sitting with my grandfather at the UCLA games, loved watching him. The guy was just ferocious in the backfield. The absolute opposite of Dion.
Yes.
Dion, who was athletic and would intercept passes, but would run away from contact. Easley went looking for it on every play.
And people also feel like he had 18 interceptions in college. That's a lot.
It is.
He had 2 years, what was it, 2 years of at least 6?
Yes, correct.
Which is ridiculous. That is
He's in the UCLA Hall of Fame. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. He's in the NFL Hall of Fame. So it is the only number for Kate that I mandate.
I mean, he earned it. Well, the other guys, but he from 18 or 17 to about 28 for those 10 years between the college and the pro.
Mm-hmm.
You could say he was probably the most underrated player
Absolutely.
of both eras in college and pros because he produced at both, and he was a hell of a punt returner.
Right. But you talk to the guys who practiced against him or who played against him, and to them it was not underrated. They will tell you the stories. They were on my social media pages. Paul Bergman, who was an outstanding tight end at UCLA, talked about practicing against Easley and just said, I've never been hit, even in games against top 25 opponents. I was never hit the way I was by Kenny Easley in practice on a regular basis.
Damn. So what's coming up on what's coming up at Last Word, and how can people interact with you on social media?
Sure. You can go to lastwordonsports.com, go to the college football page. You can go to Twitter, you can go to Facebook, you can go to Blue Sky. You can find me at Tony Bruin on those. We got football. We got game previews. The countdown is to the season. We were number 4 now, or number 3 today. We're getting there. The season is here when our first tailgate recipe will be coming up on Friday. So we got game previews, and then of course next week is the first full schedule of college football, and so we'll have a lot more game previews then. So we are here. We are working hard.
People often ask me. I was asked this weekend at a softball tournament. I was in the dugout. As a writer, who do I read? I just pulled up last word on the phone. This if there was like a sacred text of college football, it is last word on college football. My man Tone.
I'm humbled. I appreciate them, and I'm humbled by the kind words.
It's just facts. It's just, I speak facts here. As always, Tone, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the AdDrop Podcast.
All right, man. Be well.